Last week, the U.S. Supreme Court heard a case that could spell the beginning of the end for public sector unions. And the results of this case could easily then be applied to private sector unions. This would obviously be a disaster for both unions and the middle class, and I have Howard Nations with me now to discuss this case. So Howard, this past Monday, the Supreme Court heard yet another case that could be disastrous for public sector unions. They've already taken quite a few hits from this court and from some governors all over the United States at this point. So now the Supreme Court is poised really to give them yet another devastating blow. Tell us about this case that the court heard about last week.
Yeah, this was Fredericks versus California Teachers Association, and the plaintiffs in the case are 10 California teachers who are non-union members. They're suing over a California law that requires them to pay a fee for their share of the union's collective bargaining expenses. It's called a fair share fee. It's been involved in litigation quite a bit. Now, the union's position on this is that the law requires the union to bargain collectively for everyone, to negotiate for all benefits, and to represent everybody at arbitration, whether they're a union member or not. The non-union members who don't pay their fair share are getting a free ride at the expense of union members. Now, that fair share fee has been upheld by the United States Supreme Court as constitutional in 1977 in Abood versus Detroit Board of Education. But the dichotomy was set in Abood also when the Supreme Court said that while it's constitutional to charge the fair share fee, it is unconstitutional to force non-union members to pay for union political activities. That's the breakdown, because that violates the First Amendment. So now the Frederick plaintiffs are coming back seeking to overturn Abood and they're taking the position that requiring them to pay the fair share fee is a violation of their constitutional rights of free speech. They argue that fair share is the largest compelled political speech in the United States, and it violates the First Amendment.
And according to this current Supreme Court, money, corporate political spending is free speech. And so that's one of the things that they're trying to do with this, and it really just goes, to put it in the simplest terms, this is just a way to cut the amount of money that unions can give to Democratic candidates. I mean, there is no other way to really frame this other than they don't want unions to give to Democrats. I mean, it's also, you have corporations that don't want unions at all. So this is another blow to that. But these are public sector unions, so it's not as much of the corporate angle here.
Right.
So what is going to happen if the Supreme Court kind of rules as predictably as they usually do when it comes to cases regarding unions?
Well, I think in this case there is a real chance to overturn Abood because in 2012, 2014, the majority in other opinions, other cases, seemed to invite a challenge to the Abood decision. And so they, as a result of that, they've been rushing this case through to the Supreme Court to get a ruling on it before the 2016 election. The way the Supreme Court shakes out on this is kind of unusual. First of all, you have 4 liberal judges who are pro-fair share. They're pro-union, obviously. Then you have 3 conservative justices who are clearly anti-union. So that brings it down to, as usual, Kennedy. Kennedy has been pro in the past. He in the past wrote the opinion on fair share, and he was in favor of it. From the questioning on Monday, he now seems to be against it, and that bodes very badly because he could be the swing vote. Amazingly, the 5th vote is Scalia, who was he had a pro-union vote in the past. They should bronze that and put it up on the wall. But when it comes down to the political issue, something involving the Republican political agenda as this one does, Scalia is solid gold. So it looks like it's going to be 5-4 anti-union vote along political lines. So, but the real issue here is union busting. You're carrying out the Republican agenda to destroy unions in America. The immediate target may be the public sector at the moment. The precise target in this case is the teachers union, but the big fight here is just to do away with unions completely.
And if this court does have a 5-4 split in favor of Fredericks, you're going to see corporations immediately try to use this case to bust up their own unions,
Right.
within their corporations, and to use it to say, hey, you non-union workers, stop paying them. Look at this court decision. You don't have to pay for this democratic agenda that your union reps are trying to push. And again, I think it's certainly worth mentioning here the fact that unions are what built the middle class. I mean, there is a direct correlation in the United States economic history of strong union membership and strong wage growth for the middle class. I wish more people could understand that. And as soon as union membership started to decline, when Reagan came in and started breaking up all these unions, the middle class began to disappear. Now we have union membership at an all-time low, and wages are what they were 10, 20 years ago for most people. And they don't seem to understand the correlation, or they've just been fed so much misinformation by Republicans and the Republican media that they don't believe it's true. But there are plenty of charts and graphs out there that will absolutely prove that the two are related.
There's no question about that. And there are actually three groups that are behind these attacks on unions. Number one, as you say, it's corporate America, because for obvious reasons they are anti-union. The second group is the far right-wing ideologues. And then the third group is the entire Republican Party. Now, but the right wing, in this case, the Christian Educators Association International is one of the 10 plaintiffs in this case. They have a representative in there as one of the 10 plaintiffs. They're opposed to LGBT rights. They accuse the NEA of promoting the gay agenda. The guidebook author for their organization is Carl Summer, who's an opponent of school desegregation at this stage in life, and an opponent of sex education. And their goal is to gain control of the textbook content and the school curriculum. The other one is, of course, the Republican Party agenda is to destroy unions completely because, as you say, quite correctly, they're a major contributor to Democrats, both in money. It's not just money. The unions are big organizers. So it's both money and organizers. So you break the unions, you break the Democrats. It's exactly the same strategy as the Republicans used in their attack on trial lawyers. But this right-wing anti-union thing is being funded by the usual suspects, the Koch brothers, the Bradley Foundation. It's the far-right one-percenters. The unions, as you say, were a major factor in creating the middle class, and as the middle class goes, so goes the union, and vice versa. The statistics show that the unions have raised benefits by 12%, average is 12% right now, above non-union wages and benefits for the same work. So if you successfully throw out the unions, dissolve the unions, there's nobody to fight for the middle class. And then you get to the issue about the weaponization of free speech. This whole issue of looking at what's happened to free speech in the last 30 years, it's helped create the political conditions for the rising inequality that we have in this country right now. And Fredericks, this Supreme Court opinion, would just continue that downward plunge into inequality.
And, corporations are very lucky right now that they have a Supreme Court that rules somewhere between 80 and 90% in their favor. And the only way to fix that, look, I don't care if you're a Bernie guy or if you're a Hillary guy or whatever. If a Republican wins in 2016, they're going to be able to replace several Supreme Court justices, And that is going to be a bigger disaster than having a Donald Trump run the country for 4 years. What they do to the Supreme Court is going to be the biggest disaster we could ever imagine. And Howard, unfortunately, we're out of time, but thank you for this. Always a pleasure talking to you. This is a very important issue, and I hope people start paying attention to it.
One last statement. Elections have consequences. Thanks, Farron.
Thank you, Howard.